The sky over Calvor Station cracked open, and the girl was still standing in it. I saw her through the market crowd, a small alien figure frozen between two stalls while adults walked past her without a glance. Rain hammered the metal rooftops so hard it sounded like gunfire, and something about that sound made my chest tighten before I even understood why I was moving toward her. She could not have been more than 7 years old, if the veil aged anything like us. Her skin was pale blue, streaked darker where the water ran down it, and her thin shoulders shook with cold. Her eyes, large and black, followed every adult that passed, waiting for one of them to stop. None of them did. I had been on this colony world for 8 months, part of the peacekeeping detachment that watched over the fragile truce between Earth and the Veil Dominion. 2 years earlier, we had been enemies. Ships burned, cities fell. Now we shared docking bays and market squares, pretending the wounds were closed when everyone knew they were only bandaged. I was not thinking about any of that when I crossed the square. I was only thinking that a child was standing alone in the rain, and something in me refused to let that continue. I pulled off my coat and held it over her head before she even registered that I was there. She flinched, staring up at me with an expression I could not read, somewhere between fear and confusion. Up close, I could see the fine markings along her cheekbones, pale gold lines that shimmered faintly, even in the gray light. "You're freezing," I said, crouching down so I was not looming over her. "Come on, let's get you somewhere dry." She did not move. Her eyes flicked toward the crowd, toward the adults who still had not stopped, as if she expected someone to punish her for accepting help. "It's all right," I said, keeping my voice low and steady, the same tone I used to calm frightened recruits during evacuation drills. "I'm not going to hurt you." Something shifted in her expression, and finally she stepped closer, pressing herself against my side beneath the coat. She was shivering so hard I could feel it through the fabric. I did not know then that I was standing in the middle of the biggest mistake and the biggest miracle of my life, all at once. I found a covered walkway near the transit hub and knelt there with her, out of the worst of the rain, waiting for someone to come looking for a lost child. She did not speak standard well, but she understood enough to answer my questions in short, careful words. Her name was Issa. She was supposed to be waiting for someone. She did not know when they were coming. "Do the Veil not mind their children getting wet?" I asked, half joking, trying to keep her calm. Her answer surprised me. "It is a test," she said quietly. "Rain makes us strong. Adults do not help. It is the old way." I did not like that old way very much, but I did not say so. I only made sure she stayed dry until her shivering eased, and I told her stories about earth rain, how children back home used to jump in puddles instead of hiding from them. For a moment, she almost smiled. That moment ended. The second 3 armored figures came running through the square, moving with a speed and discipline I recognized instantly as trained guards. Their eyes found Yissa, and their whole posture changed from search to alarm the moment they saw me kneeling beside her with my coat still over her shoulders. The lead guard barked something into a comm device, words too fast and too sharp for me to translate, and within seconds, 4 more guards appeared, weapons lowered, but hands hovering near them. My pulse spiked. I had spent enough time in uniform to know when a room, or a square, had suddenly become dangerous. I raised my hands slowly, keeping my body between the guards and Issa without meaning to, an old instinct that refused to switch off. "She was alone in the rain," I said. "I was just keeping her dry until someone came." The lead guard's eyes moved from me to Issa and back again, and something like disbelief crossed his face. He said something to her in their language, quick and urgent, and she answered just as quickly, pointing at me, at the coat, at the rain still falling behind us. Whatever she said changed everything. The guard lowered his weapon entirely and gave a bow so deep it looked almost painful. The others followed instantly, dropping to one knee in the wet stone of the square. I stood there, soaked, confused, with my empty hands still raised, wondering if I had just made the worst mistake of my career. "You do not know who you have protected," the lead guard said in careful standard, his voice unsteady. "She's a kid," I said. "That's all I needed to know." He looked at me like I had said something impossible. "She is the daughter of the Queen Mother, heir to the Dominion throne." For a moment, the rain seemed to stop mattering entirely. My mind ran through every possible way this could go wrong, every headline it could become, every diplomatic disaster a single human accidentally covering an alien princess with his coat could trigger. She was left in the market as part of the humility rite, the guard continued, straightening slightly, though his eyes never left me. Heirs walk among commoners unprotected until adulthood, to prove they do not require privilege to endure hardship. No one is permitted to intervene. Nobody told me that, I said, and it came out sharper than I meant it to. No, he said quietly. No one would have. That is precisely why what you did matters. I did not understand what he meant, not then. I only knew that within an hour, I was standing inside a building I had never been permitted to enter, waiting outside a chamber, with walls that shimmered faintly, like the markings on Issa's face, my uniform still damp, my mind racing through every possible outcome, most of them bad. When the doors opened, I expected accusations. I expected an interrogation, or worse, an incident report that would end my career and possibly the fragile peace itself. What I got instead was a room filled with soft light and a tall veil woman standing at its center, her presence so commanding that I understood immediately, without needing to be told, that I was looking at the Queen Mother herself. Issa stood beside her, dry now, wrapped in warm robes, watching me with an expression I could not quite place. "You are the human who sheltered my daughter," the Queen Mother said. Her voice was low, resonant, carrying none of the anger I had braced for. "I am," I said, choosing honesty, because it was the only thing I had left to offer. I didn't know who she was. I saw a child alone in the rain. I couldn't just walk past that. The Queen Mother studied me for a long moment, long enough that I felt every second of it in my chest. "That is what troubles my advisors," she said finally, "and it is what convinces me." I did not understand, and I must have shown it, because she continued. "For 100 years, our people believed humans acted only from calculation. That your kindness during the war years, your restraint, your mercy toward defeated soldiers, was strategy disguised as compassion. It made you dangerous in our eyes. An enemy who fights for reasons is predictable. An enemy who fights for nothing, who simply cannot help but protect the weak, is not." I opened my mouth to argue, to explain that of course there were calculations, that no species survives without them, but she raised a hand, and I fell silent. "You did not know she was my daughter," the Queen Mother said. "You could gain nothing from protecting her. There were no cameras in that square, no witnesses of consequence, no reward waiting for you, and still, you gave her your coat before you gave her your name. She was cold," I said simply, because there was nothing else to say that felt true. Something shifted in the room then, a kind of stillness that felt heavier than silence. Issa stepped forward, out from beside her mother, and looked up at me with those same dark eyes from the market square, except now, there was no fear in them at all. "Thank you," she said in standard, careful and deliberate, like she had practiced the words the whole way here. I knelt down again, the way I had in the rain, so I was not looking down at her. "You're welcome," I said. "Any kid would deserve the same." The Queen Mother's eyes flickered at that, something unreadable passing behind them. "Any kid," she repeated softly, as though testing the shape of the words. "Not any heir, not any future ruler who might one day repay the favor. Any kid." "That's the only way I know how to think about it," I admitted. She was quiet for a long moment, and I braced myself again for consequences I could not predict. Instead, she inclined her head, a gesture I would later learn was reserved for equals, not subordinates, not enemies granted mercy. "Then perhaps," she said, "we have misunderstood your kind for a very long time. What happened after that spread faster than I expected." Word of the incident moved through Veil networks within days, not as a scandal, but as something closer to legend, retold and reshaped with each telling. The human who broke an ancient rule, not out of defiance, but because he could not see a shivering child and do nothing. I never asked to be part of any of it. I was not built for symbols or speeches, but I noticed, in the weeks that followed, how differently the Veil in the market square looked at me. How guards who once watched me with suspicion now nodded as I passed. How the fragile ceasefire, which had felt like a held breath for 2 years, began, slowly, to feel like something closer to peace. Isa found me once more before I shipped out to my next post, standing at the edge of the transit platform with her small hand raised in a gesture I now recognized as a mark of trust, one reserved for family. I never planned to change anything that day in the rain. I only saw a child who needed shelter, and I gave her mine. It turned out that was the only kind of diplomacy that ever really worked between our two peoples, the kind that asks for nothing in return and expects nothing back, except that the next time it rains, someone else might do the same.